Yo, what's going on, snipers, and welcome to our 1998-99 franchise mode. We're finally starting up this series, and I'm really excited just because it's like all these old guys from my childhood and some of them from before my childhood. It's just going to be kind of interesting to see how these guys play during their careers and stuff like that in NHL 19. And yeah, it's just going to be like a trip to the past pretty much. So the team we're doing, as you can see, is the Colorado Avalanche. They just nudged out Buffalo and I think it was Philadelphia for the team that we're doing. So Colorado is the team, and it's kind of interesting because Colorado obviously was like a champion status team at this point in time. They had some really good players like Patrick Waugh, Peter Forsberg, and Joe Sakic. So it should be a really fun franchise mode, and hopefully we can win a ton of Stanley Cups with this franchise. So one thing we got to do is, before we start up this franchise mode, is readjust the divisions, because Colorado was not in the Central Division at this point in time. They were in, I think it was called the Northwest or something division, or yeah, I think it was the Northwest Division or something like that. I don't even know what it was called, or maybe they were in the Pacific Division. But anyways, they're going to be replacing. Who is it? Oh yeah, Phoenix. So Phoenix is getting moved to the Central, even though Phoenix wasn't in the Central at this point in time, I'm pretty sure. And Detroit is going to be getting moved from the Atlantic over back to the West, where they're going to be replacing. Who was it? Oh yeah, Finland. So Finland is going to go over to the Atlantic Division, and that's how we're going to realign the divisions. So also in our division, we have the Anaheim Mighty Ducks, who are a pretty tough team because they got Solani, they got Korea. They don't have really much else other than that, but Solani and Korea for sure. Calgary is not really much of a threat at the moment because they got a young Jerome McGinley, but everybody else on their team pretty much is like older. Then we also got Edmonton, who's kind of also the same boat because they got a lot of older guys, some younger guys like Ryan Smith, but other than that, they're not much of a threat to us. Los Angeles is definitely not a threat because they got a lot of older guys and they're kind of like dwindling. Their best player though is Luc Robitaille, so we got to watch out for him. San Jose is a kind of another team that has a lot of older guys, some younger guys like Jeff Friesen, but they're not much of a threat really either, but they could still make a run for the playoffs. Then we got the Sweden Super Swedes, who are just made up of SHL players from the 98-99 seasons. So there's former NHLers and guys that would eventually become NHLers on this team. So they're not a threat really at all. They'll probably be a rebuilding team in the first year. Same with the Vancouver Canucks, even though they have some really good players like Naslund, Messier, and I think there's another couple players like McGinley. So yeah, this should be a pretty fun series. Hopefully you guys are excited for it. If you guys could also like by the end of this, like kind of just like share around these videos, because I put a lot of effort into these rosters. Obviously it would mean a lot just because I want to kind of get recognition for the series. So we're going to turn off owner mode, and we're also going to turn off morale for this franchise mode. And you guys might be like, wait, why are you doing that? Because this is normally something I don't turn off. The reason being is because a lot of these guys that are like 85 overall, they're not playing on their correct lines. Like they'd be playing on like their on the third line, for example, and then they'd lose morale, so we'd have to trade them and stuff like that. So it's just going to be a complete mess. So that's going to be turned off. Also, Fog of War is going to be turned off, so because like I already know all the overalls of all the players I made, so it kind of defeats the purpose of turning them off, except for when they're like kind of dropping off. But yeah, we're just going to have Fog of War off. We're also going to turn off this, and yeah, that's pretty much it. It's going to be really hard to play with the cap space and stuff like this in this, because there's a lot of like teams that like release good players after the first season. We're going to change this to my throwback playlist, but or not playlist, preset. Why did I say playlist? We're going to change this down to 4 minutes for period length, just because we don't want it to take that long. Authentic cap penalties, we're going to turn that off because that's for real life buyouts, and obviously in 98-99 people like if Parise retired or some buyout player that got bought out was affecting a current team, that wouldn't make any sense. Trade difficulty, and it's going to be, yeah, actually draft pick ownership has to be turned to classic. That way we don't have like say Ryan O'Reilly's draft pick from St. Louis. in Buffalo. Trade difficulty hard. And I think, yeah, that's it for quick settings. Advanced setting wise, we're going to actually make it so there's going to be ties, because we wanted to kind of feel like an old school franchise mode. So season overtime loss is going to be no points unless you tie. Season tiebreak is 1 5-on-5 overtime. I'm not sure if it was 5-on-5 or 4-on-4 back in those days, but I'm going to put it to 5-on-5. And I think that's it. Wait, what does it say? Oh, retired jerseys. We're going to turn that off completely just in case it affects our created teams, because there's a lot of guys that have retired numbers now. And the sliders, I think I already changed some stuff, so we're going to leave that the same. So let's start up this Colorado Avalanche franchise mode. We're not going to do any simulating in this episode because I want your guys' opinions and stuff like that for the series. But obviously I think we're going to definitely go for a cup year one. I would like to try and just keep contending in and year out, but it's going to be very hard to play with the cap. Like usually free agencies where like teams break or teams become really good. Because like teams lose a lot of players, and then if they don't sign anybody that good in free agency, they become a really bad player, like a really bad team the next season. And if they sign a lot of good free agents, then they become a really good team. So the series is going to be kind of an interesting one and a different one in a sense than any other franchise mode I've ever done before. Okay, so let's go through our lines for our team, and then we're going to also check the AHL because the AHL is also different. So here we go on our top line. We got Peter Forsberg. He's a great player, obviously, 91 overall. I gave him high elite potential, and he's 25, so he still will grow for maybe another 2 seasons. He's also signed only for 1 year currently, but he does have an extension that kicks in after the season for the next 3 seasons, I think. And so he's basically signed for 4 years. Joe Sakic signed for like 3 years. He's getting older though, so I don't know how long we want to keep around Joe Sakic. Like, I obviously really like Joe Sakic in Colorado, but he might be one of these guys that ask for a lot of money down the road. Then Theo Fleury, he's kind of an interesting one because in real life he was traded from Calgary to Colorado at the deadline in this 98-99 season. So he's only on a 1-year contract, so I don't know if he's going to stay with us that long, because I think in real life he left Colorado after the season for the Rangers, if I'm not mistaken. Then on the second line, we got Valery Kamensky, who's definitely, I think, one of these guys we could move out. He only has 1 year left, and he's 32 years old. He doesn't necessarily need to be moved out this year, but he might get like released in the off season. We also got Adam Denmarsh, who's a good young guy, 23 years of age, 85 overall. Then we also have Claude Lemieux, who's another older kind of guy that, yeah, he might leave next season. Like, we might have to trade him away at the deadline next year if we're not competitive or something like that, just because of his age and his cap hit. Third line, we got Stefan Yell, who's a solid young like third liner, so he's not a bad guy to keep around for a while. Then we also got a young Chris Drury, who I definitely want to keep around for a long time with that high top 6 potential. As you can see, his role's already second line forward, which if I would have had Morale on, he would have been losing morale because of ice time being on that third line, so it's good I did that. Then we also got Milan Hajduk, who's another good young guy we need to keep around, so we definitely want to start moving around these older guys and making up some cap space while being competitive at the same time. Then we also got Sean Poden, Dale Hunter, and Jeff Odgers. So all the 3 of these guys are guys that could be moved out in a few years. Like Dale Hunter's close to retirement, being 38 years. Sean Poden, I think, is signed for 3 years, and he's 30. And then Jeff Odgers is a guy that's like an enforcer. He might even actually be a scratch. Yeah, we're gonna scratch him because Sean Donovan's gonna play instead, because Sean Donovan's younger and he's better. Defensively, we got Sandis Ozolinsh and Adam Foote, 2 decently young. Like, they're not old, but they could get old soon. And yeah, they're decent overalls. I didn't actually give Sandis Ozolinsh a high elite potential, but the computer did just because he was an 87. Then on the second pairing, we got Sylvain Lefebvre and Aaron Miller. So pretty solid. Both guys are kind of older. Well, actually, Aaron Miller is not really that much, but Sylvain Lefebvre definitely is getting up there in age. And then also on the top 6 pairing, we got Gusarov, who's 34. He's one of these guys we're going to have to probably move out eventually too, or we could replace with a younger guy. Then we also have Greg DeVries, who's 26 and a pretty solid top 6 defenseman, so I think he's a good guy to keep around for maybe a season or two. Then in terms of goaltending, we got Patrick Waugh, but the only problem with having a good goalie like Patrick Waugh is that he is signed for 3 years at 10.5, so up till he's 35 years of age. After that, I don't think we'll bring him back. He might retire, like in real life. I think he retired in 2002-03, if I'm not mistaken. So that would be in like 4 seasons or 3 seasons from now. So yeah, he's one of these guys that we might not be able to re-sign after that point if he doesn't retire. And then we got Craig Billington as our backup, who's pretty solid, also 32. So we're going to have to get younger eventually too, which means keeping around the younger guys. John Clem is, he would have lost morale because of ice time being a scratch guy, but we have to have him scratched. So he's also a pretty good depth defender to have. But Jeff Odgers, we need probably a better depth forward than Jeff Odgers if we want to go far in this playoffs and stuff like that. So that is the NHL. Then in terms of the AHL, there's a lot of weird things. Like Milan McCulloch was actually a free agent in this game, but I had to move him to the AHL just because I forget what the reason was, or the computer automatically signed them or something. But yeah, well, anyways, we got Milan McCulloch. We got barely any guys with potential down here. Kosmachuk might be the best one. Yeah, Kosmachuk's probably one of the better ones. Zagazino as well. It's because I removed all the good prospects from each team, so that way it would be kind of more players wouldn't be able to get called up that easily. If we have an injury to multiple players, we might have to call up somebody really bad. If we have multiple defensive injuries, we might have to call up David Warsofsky, for example. Goaltending wise, Spencer Martin, Joe Canada, and in scratch, there's these guys. So yeah, we don't really have much in the system, and no team does either, so it should be a pretty balanced simulation for most of these teams. Now quickly, before we end this episode, we're also going to take a look at the trading block and in the draft class, just so you guys can get a sense for what's around. So some teams still have some guys like Lucas Dostal still in Anaheim, but he doesn't have the potential, so he won't make really much of an impact. So there's Anaheim, Boston, Buffalo has Dwayne Rolson on the block, so he's probably a good goalie that, he's 28 already, he's probably a good goalie that could eventually be picked up. If we wanted to, pick up a new backup goaltender or something, if, I don't know if he's listed as a starter, he might be listed as a starter, yeah, he is. Yeah, I don't know what we do with that. Calgary has Tommy Albeline on the block. He's another solid top 6 defenseman. Maybe a guy that we could bring in, even though he's only signed for 1 year. He's a decent guy. Carolina has nothing from that I created. Czech Republic, who's replacing the Columbus Blue Jackets, if you guys didn't see my roster video, has Miroslav Horava on the block, or Miloslav, I think. Dallas has Rowan Turek on the block. He's always a good young goaltender to bring in. He's 28, so he's not the youngest, but he's still a pretty solid goaltender behind Ed Belfour in Dallas. I don't know if he will get traded in this first season or not, but who knows. Detroit still has Joe Veleno. I didn't get rid of his potential though, so that's the only prospect really that Detroit has that's good, but he is unsigned currently. Then the Edmonton Oilers have Joseph Baranek and Kelly Butchberger, so Baranek's actually not that bad of a forward to bring in. If we wanted to get him for Kamensky, we get a younger guy in that's making less money, I think, too, by $8 million, or not $8 million, what the hell, $800K. Yves Racine, another solid top 4 defenseman that's playing in Finland. He's a former NHLer before the season. I think he played for the Habs and stuff like that. Florida's got nothing. Pedersen in Germany. Germany's replacing Minnesota. They also got Yvonne Corvo. Los Angeles has a lot of players. Gary Galley, Doug Bodger, and Ray Ferraro. Okay. It's going to be kind of weird, though, when Ray Ferraro's, calling his own game. Because, he's going to be in between the benches, but he's going to be also on the bench. So, that's kind of an interesting thing. Montreal has nobody. Nashville, since they're in their first season in NHL history, they got Cliff Ronning, Patrick Shelberg, and Tom Fitzgerald on the block. So 3 solid guys, but they're all kind of older. New Jersey's got Chris Terreri, another older guy, but a good backup. The Islanders have Craig Janney, Joe Sacco, and Kevin Miller on the block, all older guys as well. The Rangers have nobody. Ottawa has Damian Rhodes on the block. He's 29, and he's signed for 2 years, a pretty solid starter, but we don't really need a starter goaltender, obviously with Patrick Waugh. Anybody else? Joe Murphy, Bill Holder, and Brian Marchment for San Jose. Joe Murphy's a pretty solid top 6'4", but he's older. Yeah, all these guys that are on the block seem to be older players. And some young guys that are actually ones that I didn't make. Sean Jersey, that's funny because I think he was just recently part of that Jake Muzzin trade in real life. Vancouver has Murray Barron, Peter Zezel, and Trent Klatt on the block. So Klatt's actually not that bad, 28, and he's not got much trade value, so he's kind of an interesting guy. If we wanted to bring in a depth forward, he might be a guy that we want to bring in to like replace like Jeff Odgers or something like that. And then Washington has nobody, and yeah, that's what is on the trading block. So I think at least that last one, whoever I just said, would be a good replacement to bring in. Draft class wise, I made a couple guys for the draft class, like a couple guys that were actually drafted back in these days. So we got Daniel Sedin, who's projected to go first overall. Yes, the computer has like this Alexander Kolesnik guy up there. It's kind of cool. So he's definitely an elite player because the other ones are. There's also Henrik Zetterberg, who I had to put to the Kingston Frontenacs because for some reason they wouldn't let me put him in Sweden. And then we also got Henrik Sedin as like the 3 best ones that I made. So those guys would be interesting if they actually go to like correct teams. Like I don't think Zetterberg is going to go to Detroit just because of the fact Detroit's usually a really good team in year 1. But Sedin, one of the Sedins could go to the Vancouver Canucks, which would be pretty cool. Barrett Jackman, he's another guy I made. I don't think he'd go to St. Louis, but you never know. St. Louis could miss the playoffs. He's a pretty solid defensive defenseman, I think I made him. I believe I made him a defensive defenseman. Can't tell because I haven't scouted him yet. Who else do we got here that I made? There's a couple other guys. Patrick Stefan. He's currently looking like he's going to go in the second round. He's like a medium top 9 potential player I made. Hopefully we don't get stuck with having to draft him because I don't think he'd pan out. But he is 17, so he's not that bad. And then there was 2 goaltenders, which are Craig Anderson. He's got medium starter potential. And then there's also Ryan Miller, who... that's Hobbs. Pushkarev, Bilesma, Sexton, Quinville. Oh, there you go, Ryan Miller. Yeah, he also has medium starter potential, but instead he's 19 years of age, so he's a bit of an overager. So I don't know how good he's going to grow in comparison to Craig Anderson, but he still should grow into being a very good goaltender. And yeah, that's basically what I made for this draft that actually got drafted in 1999. So yeah, I think that's pretty much going to wrap up this first episode of our Colorado Avalanche throwback series. I hope you guys really like this series, and I hopefully it works out, because like a lot of the guys that were previously in NHL, I moved them all to Europe, but I don't know if they're ever going to appear like out of the blue in free agency, like in like say year number 10 or something like that. So hopefully that doesn't happen, and hopefully we have like kind of like an accurate like throwback series, or if like eventually players that were in the NHL start dropping into free agency like in the next 10 years or so, we get them playing alongside of some legends. That'd be kind of cool. So this series is going to probably go all over the place, but hopefully you guys like this idea. And yeah, let me know what you guys think down below. And like I said, if you guys could like share this around and get like people knowing about it, that would be awesome, because I put like over 100 hours easily into these rosters. So yeah, let me know what you guys think, and I'll see you guys next time.